Greetings, fellow pagans. The winter's over and spring is at the door. In this video I will be making a spearhead, forging the spearhead, and showing you how it's done. Now, it did take a couple of days, but this is because we're hammering it out from a singular piece of steel. So after forever, are we finally back at the forge, and it has been so terribly nice being back. I've only been here for a couple of seconds. Of course, no one's been in here, so it's full of leaves and a bunch of other things. I've had a very busy, I've been very busy with school and everything, so I haven't been able to upload anything. So let's get the leaves into the forge, burn it, so we can get some heat in here, and change into some more appropriate attire. Of course, using the tried and true method of flint and steel along with some char cloth. The ember becomes very hot almost instantly, and only blowing on it makes an almost instant fire. With all these dry leaves, it's quite easy to create a fire, especially if you have these bellows behind me here. Now, although I am in Viking clothes in some of this isn't entirely Viking reenactment, since we're also going to use the home forge for this project. So that goes without saying, not all of these things are from the Viking age. Having a burning ember, it's just about placing it the right place and putting leaves over it. It's easy as that. This method of fire making easily rivals that of modern survival methods and things like that. With these bellows, it makes it really easy and it's almost child's play. Of course, don't play with fire, you will pee your red. That is a sacred rule. With this fire going, well, smoke of course fills the forge for a quick moment before the wind carries it out smoke holes in the forge. This is also very effective for cleaning out all the leaves that just sort of float in with the wind when I'm not here. Now with some good fire going, let's change into my favorite type of clothes. This outfit here is pretty middle class and also pretty accurate. It's missing some leg wraps at the moment, but don't worry, those are equipped as soon as I remember that I've forgotten them. Of course, take aside the Dane axe, which was one of the most privileged axes to have in society. A tool made for almost exclusively combat. With the forge initially started, we can start adding coal and add the spearhead. Now, the spearhead is such a large chunk of metal that it will take a long time for me to forge out into the shape I desire. Now, if you are a bit on the spiritual side, like I am, I believe that the forge was quite happy to see me, since it started off very eagerly. It becomes quite obvious how rusty I am with this. I didn't burn myself though, so that's good. However, I did ignite some coal with that elegant movement. Beyond that, I did it again, however this time with the split, which isn't historically accurate. This one's painted red and normally used for wood. Don't mind that. However, with enough determination, I eventually cut off the unwanted material. So far, I haven't actually seen a limit to how hot this fire can go. Normally forges have a bit of a range of which heat they can deliver to which varying size of steel. However, this I haven't met yet. Now begins the long drawn out process of flattening out what will become the shaft holder or the end of the spear which will connect to the shaft. While we're doing this, we're also making sure it's creating in a triangle form so it's easier to make the head look more symmetrical along with the shaft. An exhausting task that takes forever. However, when you're only one person about it, you just sort of forge along, not really caring. Now, if this was back in the Viking ages, there most likely would have been an apprentice hammering along, making this take less time. However, I do have some limits. Using an historically accurate anvil, I also discovered that the heat warms up the anvil to a point where it's basically so warm that the piece of metal I'm hammering on loses heat very slowly because the anvil is as hot as it is. The process of thinning out the shaft holder for the spear takes so very long that I used basically the entire day on this project. However, it is of course a necessary process in order to have a spearhead. This is why the style of arrowhead probably changed from the Iron Age to the Viking Age, where a arrowhead in the Iron Age would basically be a small spearhead, whilst in the Viking Ages they would have made a little tang like you would have for a knife.
this way making the process much shorter and therefore much more affordable to make a lot of arrowheads. Another video project that I'm working on will be Viking armor and combat. I have acquired some Viking armor, which I will be using to display how Vikings used it during the Viking Ages. Talking a bit about the complications and the accessibilities, how it was manufactured, how expensive it was, along with how it makes a drastic difference in your survival chances in actual combat. I almost have the entire kit for a Viking warrior. However, I am missing the gambeson, what goes underneath the chainmail to protect me from blows and so forth. But that is it for the first day of forging the spearhead. Now we move on to the home forge, where we start curling up the shaft holder. Now I don't know the actual name for this part of the spear because I don't know it. At least not in English, so I just call it the shaft holder because it'll be holding the shaft. That makes sense to me. Now, as you can see, we've thinned it out quite a lot. It's around 2 millimeters or millimeters, in some places 3 millimeters thick. Right now, the bending or the folding of the spear shaft or whatever, I don't know what the part's called actually. It's going quite well. It's doing it pretty uniformly. It looks like there'll be plenty of space for a shaft. This here in the middle, it'll need to be heated up a little bit more, and it'll need a little bit more negotiation to do what I want to, but I am confident that this will look pretty well. This, unlike before, is a much more gentle process where we'll make the tube of the spear much more symmetric by gently hammering. Really here is there's sort of a butt cheek thing going on in the middle, which is weird, but I feel like if I can just smash that until it's on the surface of the other steel, you won't be able to see it, and it might even forge well together. Beyond that, this is looking pretty good. We just need to continue that close-up. I did run into a few complications in this process, since this is the biggest spearhead that I have ever made. So the closing is pretty good at the neck here. So we're going to start working on the head itself, and I'm very satisfied with, I mean, it's pretty round. We haven't even used a horn, and when I do, a process that's really not too complicated if you've done it a couple of times is the thinning out of the head. As long as you're continuing to make sure it's looking symmetrical, and of course looking the way you want it to when it comes to what find you're going after or whatever, it's not too bad. Keeping in mind that the spearhead is now much thinner than it was before, and therefore is more likely to overheat in the forge, so just keep that in mind. As you can see here, we're making sure it's looking the way we want it to. It has a very thick back, and it is, well, looking quite how I want it to, honestly. If you have any suggestions of what else you want to see being made in the forge, please feel free to comment below. I have a couple of projects lined up, like saxes and knives, along with axes, which will be quite an interesting experience, I believe. As you can see, this looks much more like a spear than it did in the beginning. This here is a bit of a delicate process where we're thinning out just where the spearhead starts. And you can do this quite a lot. You can also overdo it, so you just sort of want to see how much you want this to thin out, and then of course what it'll sort of try to square out. And if you don't want that, you will have to hammer it thin it out and then hammer it round again in a process so it doesn't permanently get squared and it gets too thin to then round off. The forging itself, I believe, is finished. I will talk to the customer of how he wants the spearhead, if he wants any changing, hardening, grinding, whatever he wants. So far, the indication is that he likes it to be just forged, but I am very satisfied with how the spear came out. Now, here's another project. This here is an infamous axe head. And here is the process of thinning out the hole for the handle. Now, I will be talking a lot more about axe forging with this specific axe, and later starting up another axe that I'll make to explain the entire process of how I make axes. The general direction I want to go with is that I'll start making more longer, comprehensive videos on YouTube, and shorter, more entertaining and advertising my YouTube channel on TikTok.
simply because shorter videos that are produced are more frequently viewed on TikTok, and this makes it difficult to make more comprehensive forging videos like this here. So I'll have a lot of more video making in the future. I'll see you there. There are a lot of more projects coming up, and I can't wait to make these videos. I hope you will join along for the ride.